Welcome to the Bucky weekend call for August 13 and 14. And Susan, we're going to be talking about children and the design discipline Oblivion or Utopia book from Bucky. We're going to talk about children today. So that'll be exciting. Susan, how are you feeling? And what do you expect to get out of today's call?
I'm feeling really blessed, appreciative to be with you. I feel like more clarity on the way Bucky was able to look at things is always really helpful. And I'm interested in applying this in a way that we can help tip the scales towards utopia. Manu, how do you feel and what would you like to get out of today?
I feel early, I feel blessed, I feel happy. What I expect of today is for us to progress in the line that you just said, Susan, and basically come to things that are practical for us to design a better future. Andre, how do you feel? What do you expect?
I feel blessed and grateful to be part of the session. And I'm very open to to gaining everything that this session is gonna offer, and I'm just stoked to be part of it. Yeah, Joe, how do you feel and what would you like to get out of this session?
Yes, I'm feeling very fortunate to be here. I'm looking forward to going in a little bit deeper with Utopia and Oblivion. Andre, it's very nice to meet you. I think this is the first time we've met, so I'm excited to hear your contributions as well. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what Steve has to offer. I know you have something in addition to Utopia and Oblivion. And Steve, I'm glad to see you're doing better and that you're here. How do you feel and what do you want to take away from today?
I'm here. Yeah, and I'm actually feeling markedly better.
Good.
And we'll see if it gets worse tonight as it goes on, but I've got my supplies here to kind of beef me up. Hey, I really feel blessed to be with folks who are willing to look at life at a different level. And what amazes me over and over again is how in 1965, when Bucky wrote this book, how much insight he had into the nature of the world's problems at the time. And, he wrote this book in 65, I guess it was published in 69, something like that. And right there in the 70s, there was some political interest in climate, even from Nixon and from Reagan. They were interested in climate. And then all of a sudden, whoa, everything went down. But to see how Bucky senses how everything is connected and how important it is to see things on a large scale is just really, really significant for me to see that happening. So, and I'm really grateful you guys are here, and I hope to learn something that I wouldn't have learned unless I was here with you guys, and that always happens. So I'm very grateful. All right, and with that, we'll share a screen. I'm not sure what happened to Manu, but he dropped off there. So let's hope he comes back in before too long. Here he comes. I just want to show you that in this book, Oblivion or Utopia, design discipline, which is, I'm having an epiphany about that right now, because I guess without discipline, what does the design even matter? And once I have a design, now I need discipline. This is an epiphany I'm having right now. I'm going to write it down. Discipline. He said in his book, there are 14 dominant concepts. Thus, the elementary educational system, which in contrast to synergy, starts exclusively with a few parts of the elements, leads at best to only differential statistical probability based entirely in the separate behaviors of the elementary parts. Probability, the strongest tool of statistics, which deals only with parts, at its best is a weak tool. And what he does is he gives us these 14 basic concepts right here. And taken one by one and considered only in the separate elementary educational system matter might seem to be too special or too diffuse to be effective. Taken all together, synergetically, I hope you'll find them to be as promising as I have already found them to be. And so here they are. We've already done universe. We've done humanity. And then now we're heading out tonight. We're going to go do children. Next week, if we're lucky, we'll hit teleology, reform the environment, general system theory, industrialization, 8 design science, world service industries, ephemeralization and invisible commonwealth, prime design initiative, self-discipline, comprehensive coordination, world community, and sub-communities of world human beings, Hugh beings. So there we are. And today we're on number 3, children. Any comments or questions on these min-max fam facts, the minimum maximum family of prime variable factors? These are the prime variable factors. Comments or questions? Cool. So we'll head over to the book. This is our concept number 3, children. And Joe, how do you feel about reading tonight?
Sure.
Cool.
Focus of human on the critical first 13 years of life, wherein 98% of brain function is progressively and automatically turned on, tuned in, tuned out, or shut off in direct response to the positives or negatives of the individual's environmental experiences and potentials. Focus on new life, recognizing the humanity consists of all ages. It is obvious that before any of the objectives of one have become fulfilled, many human.
Nope.
Yep, scroll down.
Sorry.
No problem.
Wow, I thought it was at the bottom of the page. Pretty soon we'll be there. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Individuals, and particularly the aged, will have died. As a consequence, it becomes necessary to set up a time and beneficiary priorities within the total scheme.
Okay, let's comment on that and see where we want to go with that. Is it real clear? Is it just obvious?
Can you scroll back up?
He says focus of human on critical first 13 years of life, where 98% of brain function is progressively automatically turned on. So he's talking about cognitive brain function or critical faculty brain function, where suddenly I get to look at values and make choices. And he says 13 years. I was in the scout program, and I'll tell you, around that 13th or 14th year, the boys that come in on 12 years old, they're just angels. When they hit 13 or 14, they start to splinter. And if they survive, when they turn 16, they're okay. But if they don't make it past 14, it's a problem. I don't know how you are with kids, but that's what we saw in the scouting program. So he nailed it right there. And now he brings in this focus on new life. Any other comments or questions? Here's his theme about tuning in and tuning out.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would just say is that, again, I think at an early age, you start to have to teach kids, and I wish I had been taught at an early age to think in terms of these 14 concepts. My life would have been a whole lot different. It's also introduces the important process of unlearning that, once you get past these formative years, what you have to do is you have to, it gets harder to recalibrate.
Right. He mentions tuning out and shutting off in direct response to positive or negatives of our environment and potentials.
Right.
Any other comments, questions?
That is the whole of epigenetics at play.
Yeah.
I find it interesting also that he's willing to say, yep, a bunch of you are already going to be off of the planet by the time you make much progress is made.
Yes.
Which I would say that because the rate of change is accelerating and the rate of acceleration is accelerating, I think we're in a unique time that those of us alive might still be able to be part of the ascension process towards that utopia. I honestly and truly believe that we are coming to a time of enough apprehension. I would love to say understanding, but at least apprehension, that I can see there's a possibility that I might not have to die for my piece of humanity to evolve, that I might be able to evolve it while I'm still here.
I got a question to the group on this. So when Bucky talks about focusing human in the first 13 years, wherein 98% of brain function is progressively and automatically tuned on, in, out, and shut off, is it referring to the children's brain function where 98% can be tuned on, in, out, and off, or us focusing on the children that can be 98% can be on, in, off? So I'm a little confused on that. What was Bucky referring, that the 98% of brain function?
I want to let our doctor expound on that.
To the read, Andre, I look at it and I think what I'm hearing is Bucky saying that by the time a human child is 13, this huge majority of how their brain automatically works and how they are inclined to tune in or tune out is really set into motion. That doesn't mean you can't change later on, but as we go to change later in life, it's been my experience that we're having to then work in contrast to those programs and tuning that was already set. That's how I'm reading it. Doesn't make me right.
Right. Well, it makes a lot of sense when I think right now being exposed to parenting quite a bit, and they always talk about there's like the golden years of the first 5 years, 6 years, that sort of thing, and I think Bucky expanded it sort of like a 13-year progression of how brain function can be developed, and it makes sense. After 13 years, probably we'll call them a teenager. They had that brain function that can tune on, in, out, and off in response to whether it's positive or negative environment that they have experienced. So I think it's crucial to have great positive exposure to how the brain function works and develop that in that way. So it makes sense. Thank you, Susan.
The other thing that comes to mind is right about age 13. So in the time Bucky was writing this, puberty would have been tied in right about age 13. And so puberty is what's happening as the hormones wash over that basic structure that's already set up in the brain. I think it's certainly a wild card time. What comes out the other side is some combination of how you wrote out the hormonal storm and the things that you had already worked out before you walked into it.
Also, Bruce Lipton and other guys, Joe Dispenza, talk about children up to about the age of 7 or 8 are in theta anyway. They're in a dream state. They don't make conscious decisions. They go along with the crowd. They're just learning and sucking things in. About the time a person hits 8 or 9, they start moving. The brain starts to come out of that trance state and move into critical faculty. And by the time a kid is 13 or 14, they really start making critical decisions, whether they're going to join this club or join that club, or if they're going to obey their parents or not obey their parents, or what's stupid in life. And that's when I think when Bucky says that 95% of the brain activity turns on in that time, that's why I mentioned the critical faculty, cognitive brain function. And at that time, by 13 or 14, a person starts to learn to make choices independent of their family. And I think that's one of the things he's referring to. I hope I said something helpful there. Any other comments or questions on that?
Let me come in with complexities and confusion. That's perhaps my role in this group. If you just link it to geometry and dynamics, we all agree that we are born with the brain and with the system, the operating system, with us. Huh? We're born with a brain and operating system. And for 14 years or 13 years, depending on the environment, things are switched on or off. It's not on the 13th year that is switched on and off. It's just that it's been switching on and off and being an exponential phenomenon. You reach a threshold where things that are switched on for the next stage. Think about critical mass of switches on and off that reach a certain level where your brain, the lights that are onto your brain are going to guide you in the next age. I think of Steve fractals, the next fractal of life. And also the comment that I have on that is that it only becomes apparent to us at that threshold because it's been happening anyway. It's been accumulating until it becomes obvious. And the conditions in which these early lives are immersed and that influence them are going to be of critical importance in the future. Because if you build a house with the wrong foundations, it's going to be very, very difficult to rectify the house where the cracks start.
Right.
Most of the time you have to pull down the house in order to build again, and that's costly. Right?
Good. There's another thing I'd like to mention, and I think I got this from Bruce Lipton, but the male brain is different from the female brain. And I can't remember, but the female brain gets fully developed by 18 to 20 age, but the male brain is 27 or 28. And the reason why is because there are 2 times in a male brain where there's a testosterone wash that kills half the brain. And there's a testosterone wash somewhere around or somewhere early, but another one comes in around that 13 or 14 years. And testosterone can do bad things to cognitive brain function. And rather than listen to me tell you about it, here's a little thing from Psychology Today. Elevated testosterone has been linked to lower cognitive empathy, the ability to recognize what another person is thinking or feeling in numerous studies. Testosterone's influence on social decision-making may also be influenced by how it pertains to the ability to enhance the person's status. So there's this, I wish I had the exact thing on, but so 13 or 14, that's when one of those testosterone flushes goes in. That's where teenage boys turn into teenage boys, and teenage girls want to go with older guys rather than teenage boys because they're stupid. And the girls realize that. And so, you know, and it's because of that testosterone that went on in our brain, guys. Anyway.
Tim, another comment here. You know, you just say develop. And in Bucky parlance, I really want to. I don't think that the brain is developing. It's the switches. You get what I'm trying to say? It comes to the difference between brain and mind. The brain is formed. It is there. All the synapses, everything is there.
Right.
But what changes is what has been switched on. What has been switched on during those critical years to make that characteristic to link to the concept of girl or boy or woman or man or female and male.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
The brain physically is the same.
Yeah. And I
But
think
when we say the brain has developed is actually what has switched on.
yeah.
It's
I
like
like
you have a house and you want to show the house.
right.
You can come in, all lights switch off. It hasn't changed the house. The light is still there, the bulb is there, but it just hasn't been, the switch was not on the other position.
Right.
So, and then I come in there, I look at it, it's all dark. I say, this is a male house. If I come in there, seeing the house and all switch on, I say, wow, this is female house. Because the impression to me is completely different. But it doesn't mean that the house is not the house.
Right. Okay. Well, I like the fact that you're bringing it back to Bucky terminology, because in a sense, and let's review back to what we just read here. Oops, I'm on the wrong thing. The brain functions progressively and automatically turned on, turned off, or tuned in, tuned out, or switched off. And, you know, I talked about it in terms of developing the brain, but Manu points out correctly, it's just what's been turned on and what's been turned off. The brain is there, but certain things are turned on and certain things are turned off. And that's based on direct response to positive and negatives of individual environment and individual potentials. So I like the idea of coming back to Bucky terminology, Manu, and seeing this not as a brain development issue, but as a turn on, turn off, tune in, tune out issue. Good point. Any other comments? Okay. All right, Joe, if you're ready, go ahead.
The behavioral sciences have disclosed the direct effects of the environment on new life. These are so great as to make it clear that the environment, including all the dynamic events and humans operative within the scenery, is more than 99% responsible for lives becoming capable and happy or frustrated and confounded. And the most profound effects on human life have been completed within the first 17 years. 92% of the environment's positive or negative effects have been wrought upon the new life by age 13. 80% have been wrought by age 8 and 50% by age 4. It is obvious that effective work that can be done in advantaging life through favorable environment transformation can be realized within the first 13 years of human life, and particularly in the first 4 years of life.
Yeah. Have you guys heard the saying about from the Jesuit priests, if you give me a kid until they're 7 years old, I'll give you an adult? Have you heard that?
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
an old Jesuit thing. And so Bucky's just reaffirming what's been known. Any other comments or questions on this?
Just wondering where you got these percentages, but I mean, they seem
Yeah,
to be
me
pretty
too.
accurate. They seem to be somewhat accurate.
Yeah. I wish he did.
What is the ratio of 8 to 13?
I'm sorry, the ratio 8 to 13.
80%.
No, 8 to 13.
Well, it says 80%. 80% has been brought by the age 8. Oh, you went 8 to 13, yeah.
Yes. 8 to 13 is 62.
Oh,
Oh,
I
mass.
see.
62%. What does it connotate to?
Critical mass.
Critical mass, yeah.
Interesting that 50% is by 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at a 4-year-old and you think, oh my goodness, they're 50% of who that person's going to be. They're
Yeah.
4 years old. Wow.
They say the latest stages of life are just refinements
Yeah.
of your
Hopefully it's just refinement. Hopefully I'll
yeah,
be.
it's just to say it's so difficult to change. You know, what is between quote your core if you didn't adjust properly. It's like you have a screw, you have a bolt and a nut, and then when you are putting the nut on the bolt, you kind of how would I say? I was going to say incline it. It doesn't come in the normal, completely perpendicular to the bolt, the nut, and then is going to be squeezing, and everything is just going to be a little bit out of place in terms of precision and the easiness of the function for which the bolt and the screw were designed for.
Yeah. So it's obvious the effective work that can be done in advantaging. And Joe, you never have to apologize for not pronouncing one of his words because he uses words so weirdly.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
about yeah.
Nah, you don't have to apologize. So very cool. Are we ready to proceed?
Sure.
All right.
Let's do it. In order for the individual to be objectively effective as a design scientist in altering the environment on behalf of his fellow man, it is necessary for him to organize his efforts so that they may be become operative at a sufficient number of years ahead of his original initiating to be able to transcend any frustration of his efforts by the momentum of already unvested interests. This period has been discovered to be 1 generation or 25 years. My work was initiated in 1927, was designed to become effective in 1952. This proved to be a realistic forecast. In 1952, Ford Motors bought a large geodesic dome. I didn't know that. Combining the concept of the time lags and most effective period for advantaging life, my concept 3 came to focus on advantaging the new life to protect the new life prominently from 1 to 4, secondarily on 4 to 7, thirdly on 7 to 13. And lives of the parents to be advantaged. Well, I wish my parents had read this.
Wow.
Joe,
Wow.
I think you're turning out okay.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Comments or questions?
I appreciated Susan's comment.
I think the fact that all of us actually care about the biosphere and are willing to spend time and study would show that we at least got some bit of structure correctly. I do like this idea about effective timing, and in other writings, Bucky's talked about it almost like a gestational period. For you put new information out, and what is that time gap to the range where other people will really begin to consider it. Sometimes that gap of time, that lag, is a bit disconcerting, but
I do really think that what you brought here, it was what we've been discussing. Let's just put it this way. How do we link this paragraph to boundary, space,
Mm,
energy flow, lag? You see that as I seem to see?
Mhm.
I see the lag.
Boundary is early life,
Okay.
really. That is a boundary. There is a general problem, but really, if I really want to be able to maximize my chances of altering something at larger scale for the betterment of all, this is the boundary of my action. Now, there's energy in there, and there is a time lag of observation. You see, say here, is that you need 20 years, 25 years to be able to fend off your frustrations, because there will be frustration. And because there is frustration, and also you recognize that there is legacy of things, because what is humanity in actual fact? What is it? Is the partially superimposing experiences of all humans, right? That's what you call life that we live. It is. We are like this, influencing there and continuing and doing things continuously. We are creating that history. That's what we have lived. That's what we are going to be living. It's always and only those experiences that partially overlap generations to generations forward in an evolutionary pattern. That is what our experience is. And he's saying here that teleologically, if you really want result, we want the objective is the betterment of all humanity forward, right? How do we design conditions for the betterment of all humanity? Focus on children, focus on the first 13 years, 14 years. But having done those 13, 14 years, don't be frustrated, because you still need another 13 years to build up, to fend off the frustrations of experimentation of life. So lag is time, and lag are also be introduced. Boundary, space, time, lag. Right?
All right.
That was my little contribution to this.
Well, and I think your time lags here, he's given us a priority that if we really wanted right now to advantage life and get the most out of whatever we're doing, we should take care of everybody that's 1 to 4. Make sure everybody that's 1 to 4 years old has got it handled. And then by the time the 1 years old or 4 years old, then we got our second priority. And if we can do it sooner, we'll do it. But then take care of people that are 4 to 7. Now we're understanding there's a lag anyway. We're using time lags, and we're also understanding the most effective period for advantaging life. The most effective period is 1 to 4. The second is 4 to 7. And third is 7 to 13. And then the lives of the parents can be advantaged after that. And it boggles my mind that in America, we've had this big push for, there's a big movement on saying, okay, no more abortion. We're going to protect new life. But now we're having people who are in poverty, who have been victims of crime and victims of negligence, who are forced to have babies, and they can't afford the babies. And suddenly those babies are going to be raised in poverty. I don't mind. I mean, I think everybody should have a right to choose at some level, but the idea of forcing every baby to be born and then not taking care of that child for the first 4 years of its development is a sin. making sure that every child has what they need. And then secondarily, 4. This is the lag he's talking about. And then thirdly, 7 to 13. And then after that, we'll worry about the parents. They're hopeless, you know?
Well, I'm going to pop in just a slightly, I'm going to just go right over what you said though, Steve.
Okay.
It's so hard. I mean, I have children in this generation who are young adults now, and they all feel that there should be a legal right to choose whether or not to complete a pregnancy. I understand that, but I'm also very clear that that's taking out a life that is otherwise defenseless.
Right.
What if the focus, let's stop fucking arguing about that and let's
Yeah.
take care of the 1 to 4 year olds.
Yes.
And maybe it would raise a generation that literally had the skills to choose.
Yes.
Maybe it would make it less scary to have
Right.
a baby if you knew that there was going to be some focus and help in the society on taking care of that young life.
Yeah.
So I think we argue about the wrong things often.
Well, they're
Totally agree.
distractions. They're distractions from the real issues.
Yeah.
That's
But-
the real problem.
Susan, what if Eugene was looking over?
What?
I'm sorry, what?
What if Eugene?
I'm sorry, I don't know who Eugene is.
Eugenism.
Eugenic. Wait,
Oh,
like
eugenics?
eugenics.
Yeah.
What about?
Well, there is
Well, I mean, in terms of what Becky is saying there, and what the comment from Steve and Susan, there's always the danger of some big brother coming in and trying to cleanse in a way,
yeah.
the way we're evolving.
Yeah.
You get the danger? It's
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
Some is easy, and it's happened to our monetary systems and all of these things. For some guys to say, hey, we are the one who know. This is the way you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And enforce it. That becomes very complicated.
This reminds me of Mahatma Gandhi. If you remember in his, I always thought that the universe, where there's going to be a world war, and the people on one side of the war would have read Mahatma Gandhi's biography, and the other half wouldn't have, and they would be fighting each other. And I think that's really where the good and evil is. I mean, there's a case where Mahatma Gandhi, they bring before him in the custom in India, if somebody was responsible for the death of the householder, of the head of the household, then that person who was responsible for this had to take over and provide for his family, for that person's family. And so there's a case where a Hindu guy or a Muslim guy had been responsible for the death for another guy who was the opposite religion. And so he had his kids were one religion, and the opposite religion were the kids of his adoptive family. And they brought this case to Mahatma Gandhi and said, what should he do? He's a Muslim. He shouldn't raise a Hindu kid. And the other people argued, well, he was a Hindu kid. He ought to be raised a Hindu kid. And Mahatma Gandhi said that the Hindu should raise that Muslim boy to be the best Muslim there is. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. So in other words, honor the family traditions. Don't be an authority over somebody else's life. Give them the choice to be who they want to be. And that was a very powerful story. If you remember that story of Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, I thought it was really cool. He was,
and that's,
dude.
Steve, that's why Bucky says humanity is in final examination. But it's not the final examination of corporations or organizations, is that of the individual. So the dual of that we're talking about is the empowerment.
Right.
Is the empowerment of the individual. And that's why what makes it so difficult, because we are so kind of stubborn of seeing the macro first, considering them from the micro point of view. It's so difficult to get out of, let me call it, this body of mine, to think from out.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult. And that again is in relationship to your environment. What has been fed into you? What was your environment? What was to you as natural and evident as you started discovering that environment?
Cool. Comments and questions? Okay. Well, gosh, we finished children. And we're now going to move on to the next topic here, teleology.
Should be
Go ahead.
interesting. Concept 4, teleology.
Okay.
The conscious deliberations and decisions of human mind, which reorganize the subconsciously feedback informations. The philosophic reduction of a plurality of subjectively experienced pattern cognitions into conceptually recognized imagined patterns of generalized principles to forwardly control specifically anticipated events by designed modification of environment patterns.
Wow. That's such a mouthful.
That's a little deep.
That's a little deep.
Okay.
So
Do you
let's
wanna-
just hit it one sentence at a time. What's that first sentence?
The conscious deliberations and decisions of the human mind, which reorganize the subconsciously feedback
Fed back.
or fed back. I'm sorry, fed back.
Oh, that's okay, dude. I had to read that 3 times. So consciously I deliberate and I make decisions
Mm.
that reorganize the subconsciously fed back information. So I'm going out there, I'm subconsciously getting an information loop from my environment all around. But now we have conscious deliberations, decisions, which reorganize that subconsciously intuited or subconsciously apprehended.
So it's kind of like I don't know, rational kind of thinking. I'm starting to think like, or Daniel Kahneman system 1, system 2 approach to thinking. Would that be a proper way of
How is that?
interpreting it?
What's system 1 and system 2?
Well, system 2 is essentially your conscious decisions that you make. One that are not automatics, automatically kind of like automatic decisions. So the idea that you're going to get up and walk, you don't consciously think about that, you just do it.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing things, if you're consciously contemplating every move, then you would pretty much be paralyzed. So I was just thinking about this aspect of deliberation is that when you're consciously reorganizing the way you perceive the world.
The other piece that's come. Oh, go ahead, Mano.
I was just going to say, let's not attack 4 differently from, it is a flow from 3. Teleology is a flow from 3, is a generalization from 3. Our experience have shown that the most potent influence in shaping ourselves in the future, that is our children, for the outcome is early. Therefore, what do? Teleology is, in a nutshell, that you act with in mind the result and not necessarily the causes.
Yeah.
We happen to be here. We're here. We don't know why we're here, but we are here as humans. So what do we do to ensure the better? We first recognize where we are, that there are systems in the working. So you recognize that is in, out, that is in between, that is around. You're recognizing that. You're recognizing that there is a space, a boundary, delineated by the boundary. You're recognizing that there's a lot. If you really recognize and believe in that those are things that are in the play, is going to influence your subconscious in a certain way or patterns.
Mm.
That will take you to the next level. You get what I'm trying to say? So to me, concept 4 flows from concept 3. The two are really is like they are really linked.
Yeah, this is basically, these two sentences here are basically a definition of teleology.
Yeah.
The philosophic reduction of the plurality of human experience into a conceptually recognized or imagined pattern. So I take all my experience, I imagine a pattern, I imagine a pattern, and I use that pattern to control anticipated events.
Yeah. But Bucky built everything from unity is plural at the minimum of 2.
Mm.
That was his basis.
So one of the books that I'm reading right now is talking about esoteric phenomenon and how to be looking at the brain and starting with some basic concepts of left brain, right brain, where the right brain has, it's integrative, it senses, it contains that subconscious, it potentially takes in every single thing that's in the environment. And it actually, in the end, integrates everything. Where the left brain, which in this segment of our development in consciousness has become, for the first time, has really become dominant. The left brain is deriving. It is narrowing the focus. It is lining up in causal type. I want to have a linear thought. So at the same time, if we get the chance to honor both parts, we get all the benefits that come out of this derivative process on the left brain, which is labeling something so I can communicate it to you with words or with writing or visually. And then the very beautiful thing, which I think we're trying to do right now, is to take it back over to the right brain and integrate it. That there's all of our stored experience, everything that's ever been in our ability to conceive is there. And we're kind of going back and forth from the big, broad, macro right brain to this linear columnated left brain, and there's gifts on both sides. And so what I heard from that was that, hey, all this experience is going on, it's all coming into the subconscious, and then we have this moment to try to look through it and organize it in a way that we derive these generalized principles from this huge experience. But I don't want to be stuck on just always integrating and or always deriving. I want to have that option for both parts of my mind to work. And I'm using mind very specifically there.
Yeah,
Right.
It's very interesting that you use that. What is your left brain? Is your lagging brain. And your right brain is your leading brain.
My wedding brain?
Leading.
Leading and lagging.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
And
As if-
how
I'm not hearing the words.
how can leading and lagging coexist at each time? It's true around.
Oh, leading and lagging, like
Yes.
lag time and lead time. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so your left brain is a slow brain.
It's
It's your slow
calibrating.
brain. Yes, it's the brain that say, hey, look, I'm jumping on the side of this flow, and I consider that pattern that I saw at time t-1 that I saw before. You see, instant is time t. It says, well, I remember this period that happened before. So t minus 1, and I sit with it. What does it mean? It's a slow brain. The right brain is the dreaming brain, is the one that goes out, is the plus brain. So again, gravity, radiation. But how can gravity and radiation coexist? The only way they can coexist and be true at every time is that there was in between something and around something that connected the torus. You see that metaphor, Susan?
Yeah, and I love it. And we've gone for so long really looking at the whole idea of time, timing, sequence, and lag, of words as leading indicators. They're ideas. They kind of get the idea going, and that's a very right brain
Right.
thing. And then the numbers come back and we can calibrate and we can measure and we can start to be predictive based upon that feedback from the calibration process. And so you wouldn't want to do without either one, but it's really, really important for me more times to be able to characterize which one I'm looking at.
The
Do
two
I-
are necessary. That's why I say all of Bucky's stuff is built upon the concept of duality.
Mhm.
Unity is plural at the minimum of 2, always. It means that if you are considering one phase, you ought to have in your mind, on your back burner, that there's the other phase.
At a minimum.
Yes, at a
Yes.
minimum. And that phase will happen, whether you want it or not, it will happen. Because all is cyclical, all is spherical. It will happen. And you happen to be, by the way or when it's happening, is going to sweep you away. It's like you are navigating a river downstream, and you're going faster and faster. You say, Yahoo, that's nice. I'm on my rafter, and this is beautiful. But you're going to reach the cataract at one point or the other, one way. Unless you hold on the reeds of a side of a river to slow you down and say, hey, this thing is going too fast.
Yeah.
You were just there say, Yahoo, it's
Create
fine,
the
I'm
flag.
going faster, where you're going to be flung far away and hit against something, that hit the ground really hard and disintegrate. So you want to navigate and re-navigate, you have to think that I'm going downstream, I had to go back upstream in order to go downstream again. I always have to go back, either walking, I reach a certain point, I say, okay, this is enough. I have to take my rafter, carry it on land, go upstream again, and come back. Or I put something that gives me anti-entropic energy to go against the flow down. That is, you put a boat engine or something, you put an engine, a generator or something to give you the energy to kind of navigate upstream back to the point where you were.
At least create some lag so that I don't get thrown downstream. And if possible, anti-entropic so I stay where I am or maybe go upstream if that's desirable.
Yeah, but here you see that because I knew the cycle, I designed something that allows me to come downstream in the most profitable way and upstream in the most profitable way. Overall, it is better because I will spin because of, let's say I put a generator that is running some stuff to allow me to navigate upstream because of the leverage and everything. The energy that I'm spending to go back to the point upstream is a fraction of the one that I will spend walking back up. So therefore, locally, I have designed something anticipatorily that allows me to achieve I would say better at the lowest cost.
Okay, so what Mano just said is a fantastic topological discussion of what we're reading here. And I just want to restate what Mano just said and use the exact words of Bucky. Because what he's saying here is that I need a philosophic reduction of all these plural experiences, of all these experience pattern recognitions. I need to reduce those, bring them into my conceptually recognized, my imagination patterns. And here's the secret, that if I want to be successful, I'm better off by creating modifications of current environmental patterns. In other words, instead of coming up with a brand new idea and saying, everybody jump out of the canoe, we're going to do something else, the most acceptable patterns can be by modifying a current design somehow. That's how most people are going to buy into it. So if I do have a revolutionary idea, I can introduce it, and I will be more successful if I provide a bridge from existing environmental patterns and show them some logical modification to get to this point.
And that's thinking in multiple dimensions as well. You know.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to bring this down to, if I have a business and I want it to be successful, find somebody else's business that's already successful, figure out how to change it to make it more successful, and introduce that plan. So
That's
I'm
right.
talking-
It's making a connection, or it's
Right.
providing making a connection and a value proposition.
right, based on designing modifications of current environmental patterns. I think I just said exactly what Manu said, but he said it very topologically.
But there are generalized principles that you can use actually in that case as well.
Do you want to name one, or what are you thinking?
Do I want to name, is there a Bucky generalized principle? I can only think of them in terms of monetary principles. So I don't know if that's the best way of probably thinking about it. Because I always think that's how my mind goes towards value propositions.
So if
But-
I,
But
like one of the,
yeah, Susan, go on. I've snatched from you
one of
many
the
times.
only things that I can ever say I feel like I really got clear as a generalized principle is gravity radiation. So if I'm thinking about that in my business and I want to have people gravitate in, I look at the gravity formula and we understand that it's about the mass that I have in my own company, the mass of appeal, the mass of energy. And it's also divided by the square root of the distance between me and those people that I want to get to. So the closeness is going to play really importantly. So that's why what you want to be able to link maybe to other. So maybe I take something on my website and I go ahead and put some links out to other organizations that have a similar bent. And by doing so, I've increased the mass of my organization. So that might improve the gravity, that might attract more people in. Or I can take how I'm doing my business and I can take it closer to these other people that I want to be impacting or bringing in. And so then kind of cutting down on the radius. So in an indirect proportion, if I can, so it's also multiplied by dividing. So I take my product or service and go to a farmer's market where I know that the people who care deeply about a certain set of things are going to be showing up, or to a Greek festival, or to a college work show, college job fair. So kind of like working with those pieces of the gravity formula. And I'm pretty sure Manu is going to have something much better to say.
No, I was just going to call our attention to the difference between general principle and generalized principle.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Generalized principle is from in out. A general principle is there, is true everywhere.
Right.
Gravity, radiation. Right?
Mhm.
But by experience, we are seeing something and then we extend it progressively. We generalizing it in many, many situations until it cannot be general anymore. Anti-entropic is generalized.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm trying to say? It is true to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would call that a general principle.
Yes, and that's why Steve always make the comments locally in regard to anti-entropy. It is a construct. That's why you use anti-entropic construct. It is something that we use, general principle, to apply to alter our environment in a certain way. But it's not infinitum. Right?
Okay.
Would time be a generalized principle?
I think of it more as a general principle.
I mean,
rather than
I'm sorry,
generalized.
forgive me. Yeah, it would be a general principle.
No, lag is a general principle.
That time, so that isn't that time?
I
Essentially.
don't know. Maybe we're at the border of philosophy and
Well, no, it's interesting because anyway, I'd like to think about those things.
Time and lag as a dual is a general principle.
It's a good one because
time and lag as a dual. It's like space and boundary. They are duals. One cannot exist without the other. They always coexist.
because what is time and lag related to if you think about it in business? Money. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I'm just saying it is what it is. That's kind of how, from what I understand, how Toyota looked at things a little bit differently, where car manufacturers are looking at costs, many of them, how to reduce their costs, and Toyota looked at things at how to reduce their time actually to production. And they said costs would actually go down if you reduced your time.
And that was also a measure of lag.
Right. So the goal was actually, the principle that they were following was actually, if they would have been following time or lag, they would actually, instead of following costs, then I think that would have.
But Joe, that's good. That is the general principle is we are going to just in time, right? Toyota.
Right.
Okay, but that just in time fell apart during COVID.
True.
The conditions, I mean, that was the causes. We felt it in terms of the cost of cars and the cost of second-hand.
I just had this conversation last night.
Yes, everything went up. So that is only valid within certain boundaries, and you have to recognize them.
Okay.
So you cannot just have a strategy of just in time. That has been, I mean, you are a stoicist. That has been a problem.
No,
you can't be just in time. You really have to. You don't know exactly but you know one thing, that it has happened, it will happen. It might not be in my lifetime, but it will happen. Therefore, my way to anti-entropically, trying to weather myself is that I have to have redundancy. That's one of the things that I get yes, I have to have redundancy in my system, because whatever it is going to be taxing me in energy. And if energy is expressed in terms of either part of my productivity that I put aside, I wouldn't say it guarantee you survival, but it betters your chances of survival in case of a let's just call it a black swan. Everybody's ignoring, but the characteristic, am I wrong, Joe? Because you are practicing this stuff. Mine is not, I'm not a practitioner.
No, I mean, I think you're on point. I had the same conversation literally the same exact conversation last night regarding just-in-time and supply chain issues, to moving from just-in-time to just in case, kind of like an approach. So some of this makes sense, but I still haven't thought it through enough, because I'm still not sold on the idea of just-in-time doesn't work.
Okay,
even though it didn't work under certain conditions.
Let me give an example, right? I have in my garage a bicycle that I used to cycle a lot, but I put it up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not wrong. But I have a guy coming to help me, and he sees my bicycle because I have a car. I want my bicycle, and I've been telling him no, and he doesn't understand why my bicycle, because there are times when your bicycle is much more useful than a car. It allows you in places that a car wouldn't go.
Sure.
It's more discreet, whatever the case, the environment. So it's redundant, as you see me in this phase. But you take my life holistically, is not redundant. It is just what you call appropriation of part of the results that I have. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a risk management aspect to it too, though.
Yes. It's like Ray Dalio talks about, like Connecticut. In Connecticut, he has the highest, I didn't know that the highest per capita income in the US, or one of the highest. All right? Connecticut, yes. It's a small state, but really the per capita income of Connecticut is one of the top in the US. Yet, in Connecticut, in poor neighborhoods, 50% of all students are kind of, I would call it disengaged. They are either out of school or they are in school, but they're absent. They are not, they're not getting what they're supposed to get. That's dire. And the better people, instead the response of the better people are better off, they build these islands of prosperity, or they are moving state to Florida, to Texas, to other places where it is, okay, believe that the individual is better. All right? Mm-hmm. So you can't live in Connecticut and be that rich and be disengaged. In the long run, it's not going to serve you. You better be engaged in your community, engaged in the fight for change, engaged in the fight for betterment, right? I'm not talking ideology here. I'm just talking about you managing your resources and your time.
I see.
You run away, you build a fort, or do you control what you can do? to control what you can do it in mind, thinking about the result that you all expect or dream. Tomorrow is teleological.
Mm.
Cool.
I think, sorry, Steven.
Go ahead.
Right. When I think Steve defined what teleology based on what oh, this my kid.
Hi.
he just finished the Sunday school, the Buddhist Sunday school. So I had
That's
to
awesome.
pick him up. So we're actually
What's
in
his
the-
name?
Aiden.
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 Hello,
Hi,
Aiden.
Hey. Right. I think
We
I
were just
wanted
talking about you.
I want to just chime in to see if my understanding is correct, because Steve was sharing about the definition of Bucky on teleology, on the couple of sentences on that concept, where Bucky was saying that rather than coming up with a fresh original idea, you can actually look at different spaces and industry and to see what can transpire, that we can do an improvement or a betterment, right? So when it comes to business and investments, what I thought of that can be a good analogy on to create you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're creating a better structure to what a wheel can serve, right? Back in the day, there is Friendsters and MySpace, and then Zuckerberg comes in with new Facebook and things like that. Or if you look at a marketplace, there are people doing P2P or even just a solid marketplace before Amazon came in, right? Google is not the first search engine, but it sort of came out and derived from ideas that people have been taking it, and they create. It could be more simplified, more effective, more faster, stronger, depending on what area you're looking at. So it's quite interesting to me that Bucky has that forward thinking, or even articulate in that sense, where rather than inventing a new wheel, you can better it. And it's always that improvement, is always that progression, is always that iteration of a journey, rather than coming up with a brand new idea and starting from scratch type of thing. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And if my understanding is correct along that line, just wanted to throw that. And what Manu was sharing about left brain being sort of like a lagging indicator and right brain being a leading indicator was very profound way of looking at how your brain function is. I've never thought of that as well. You talk about creativity and innovation on the right, and logic and analysis on the left most of the time. But that was a very good insight. Thanks, Manu, for sharing that. I would say an observation that can get challenged and stimulate my mind in terms of looking at things from a different perspective. So I just want to acknowledge that from Manu. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I do think,
Yeah, carry on, Manu.
I do think that Steve was even much more than that. Yes, improvement, but I link it to the idea of pollution that we discussed some time ago,
Mhm.
and openness also. You improve, but when it's time to to dish or to put on the side, put it on the side because, you know, you've gone all the way and you've got the information that allows you for a better decision. What I mean is that Steve is not saying that do not change.
Yep.
Steve is saying that don't just always be, okay, new. Everything that was there is wrong. It can be improved, right? But there comes time when, hey, this new thing is a new thing. You have to go that way because we know of the consequences of what we've been working on improving on how the limitations are. So you have to be open-minded. You don't have to be ideological. You have to be ready to always test, pursuit of veritas, and to progress that way. It is it's a ceaselessly process of living. That's what it is.
I like to talk about successive reapproximation.
Yeah.
So like we're talking about incremental changes. If I have a new idea and it's revolutionary, the best way to get that thing sold is to show people how they can incrementally change from where they are to get to where they need to be. And they may not see the vision, but if they can see the incremental change and see the benefit of the incremental change, I'm going to support the establishment of my new idea.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Interestingly, Steve, that links to what you just said there. One of the definition, not the definition, of characteristic of a topology is when variation is always small in relationship to the feature, the general feature.
Okay.
There's no discontinuity. You get me? If you have, taking a geological example, if you have a flat, generally flat terrain, the moment you have a fault, is no more the same topology. It's different.
Yeah.
You have a topology of fault, you have a topology of delta, for example, or things like that. You get what I'm trying to say? It is in the form, in that a variation of a function measured in relationship to a variable is not bigger than, is not as big as to make a difference in the feature. You get me?
Yeah.
That's why you have continuity of surface, whether you're talking about a cone or a torus, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome how Steve was talking about incremental change towards a sort of like evolution of an idea, and how linking the concept of teleology to children, to humanity, where it is absolutely critical to kind of educate, share, or inspire the first 13 years of a being, a children, where you look at incremental changes as something absolutely needed in the process of human journey. Where when it comes to business or investments or progression of even the country, at times people look at, we gotta have fresh ideas so that to blossom an economy boost and whatnot. But what people may not see is that small incremental changes at time, over a span of frequency and time, can be extremely powerful rather than a drastic change that sort of kills a momentum.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to build back up from scratch in that essence. And that happens time after time when it comes to business, right? You want to take something from a different industry and tweak it towards this industry. May not sound sexy, may not sound cool, but that, well, original idea ain't original in that essence. There's a lot of people that have been doing it, but they may do it from different interpretation, different era, you know. But once you kind of be open to taking and learning from different perspective of people, I think that incremental changes over time is extremely profound, and I think that is something that I'm gathering on the linkage of this session, and also staying curious from the previous session of humanity. I think that is pretty powerful in that teaching. Yeah.
Good. All right, are we ready to move ahead? Because there's an exciting little outline about to appear that I think we can cover before we go. Let's see if we can get there. So, did we read this last sentence right here? I put it in the chat.
Generalized, comprehensive, and anticipatory design science.
That seems to be a definition of teleology. These two are definitions of teleology.
You know, I don't see purpose anywhere in here.
I know it. I love it.
And so I gotta say that that's kind of critical when I hear the word teleology. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
to
know.
me, teleology is the purpose of a thing.
Right.
And what Bucky's doing is saying, well, purpose can be philosophical, it can be religious. You can come up with a lot of purpose, but instead of talking purpose, let's just talk about generalized, comprehensive, and anticipatory design science. So instead of taking
Purpose is anticipatory, isn't it?
Is it? I mean,
It's implied, yes, anticipatory.
Yeah.
You know what?
In other words,
What
we're
is
gonna
your
get
purpose?
practical.
What are you? What,
could
Yeah,
be
why?
anticipating something without purpose. I mean, you know, we do that. Well,
how can you? He said generalized, comprehensive, and anticipatory. Design is now.
well, I guess it could be Oblivion.
The
Okay.
result
So
is in the
that would
future,
be.
but we are anticipating it.
So, all right, I was just thinking of Utopian or Oblivion in the sense that it could have a purpose, it just may not be a good one.
You know, I'm with you, Joe. That's the reason why I stuck into the chat the Google definition of teleology and then these, because it looks to me like Bucky is taking a transition from a philosophical concept where people can debate about the purpose of life, the purpose of this event, and come down and say, look, let's just take generalized, comprehensive, and anticipatory design science. Let's use design and come out of this idea of this esoteric or this concept of purpose. Let's come into design, comprehensive and anticipatory design.
But I think even that Steve is saying that I'm designing for this,
Right.
for the betterment of all humanity. I am designing now.
Yeah.
Having learned of the principles, I'm designing now for this future.
Yeah.
Bucky is not designing just to build an atomic bomb. No, that's not his design.
Yeah. If I come to my group and I say, let's design this thing with a purpose in mind,
Yeah.
that's a philosophical concept. But when I come up,
But it's a very important one, though. It's not something that should be kind of discounted. And the reason why is I think that I don't want to get too philosophical here because that we've gotten very good at material and efficient causes. If you're talking about Aristotle, we're very good at taking things and creating things, but understanding their purpose is something that we're pretty bad at.
I think go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess Bucky's answering that.
Yes.
And to some degree, it just wasn't really clear to me when you're talking about he's doing it, and I've heard him say it. I mean, in videos that he designs, for the betterment of humanity, man. Right. So that there is a purpose there, and it's an implied purpose. But I don't know. Anyway, words wise, I still, I guess it falls under anticipatory design, and we automatically assume that anticipatory design is utopian.
No, but Joe, have you seem from what you're saying, it looks to me that you are forgetting forward a certain fundamental, that is the duality. Did you accept the duality fully, the principle?
Yes.
Okay, if you accept it fully, it means that whatever you do in that your design, you have to be responsible for it. You have to be accountable.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because
Yeah, you're
the
right.
design gives you power, but you have to be accountable for that power. So if I'm designing a reactor, an atomic reactor, okay, how am I accounting for it in order for it to be used only for energy generation, for which is very good? What do I put around in terms of containing the risk, or is it even used for a different purpose rather than the one that I designed it for? You get me?
Yeah.
So the disposal of plutonium or things like that.
Right.
How do you, if you are building a reactor, how do you agree on that? So you really need to have agreement that are strong and reliable in a way that you keep plutonium, right?
That's right.
In order that you have, because, let's just say it, unless there is a, I don't know what breakthrough in terms of accumulation of energy, I'm talking about battery technology,
Right.
it's going to
Right.
be very, very difficult for the time being to just rely on renewable. A much better solution is to restrain the use of those that are pollutant to certain basic function and to optimize the use of energy. How can we export energy, reliably from Southeast Asia to Africa when they are at night? Or things like that. You have to start thinking globally instead of thinking in terms of a country or a philosophy, a religion. You have to be comprehensive.
Right. Right. And that's where the anticipatory design kind of comes in.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
accepted that we want to be comprehensive. And that starts from the beginning. The first comprehensibility is duality. Unity is plural at the minimum of two. Right, responsibility. Power, accountability. It always goes like that. But if that is neglected somewhere along the way, we have problems.
So
that's why education is so important.
yeah. So Joe, I kind of resisted this idea of teleology, this definition shift. And I think for me, Bucky's inviting us to move from a philosophical religious discussion to a scientific discussion. So instead of like knowing what your purpose is, let's get the science. Let's turn this into a scientific question and come out of the philosophical discussions. And if we're going to look at the science,
well,
let's look at
I think
general-
design. I think design is philosophical, but that's just my thought.
well, he calls it design science.
Right. Right. So I think that there's philosophy implied there. I think it's
There
implied.
is,
Yeah,
there is,
so-
but he's coming out of he's trying to shift from religion to science, to data. Let's make sure we're doing something comprehensive here.
Okay.
And I think that's what Mana's discussion is about, the atomic bomb, right? We
well,
built
the
atomic
batteries
bomb.
or even batteries. I think is the example.
How comprehensive and generalized and how anticipatory was our design of the atomic bomb?
Yes.
It was not very comprehensive. It was not very generalized, and it certainly didn't anticipate much. And Einstein knew it and others knew it and said, don't use the bomb. So interesting. I think it's an invitation from his perspective. Any other comments or questions here? Because
I
I
think we
think,
should progress to that last paragraph, and then
what's that?
I say we should progress to the next one, as you say.
Yeah,
Read
that's what
something
I'm doing.
and-
That's what I'm doing. Okay. Now these are things we can ponder. And I'm gonna make this page a little bit smaller here. See if we can get more of it in here. But
Don't,
I think we can review this before we go, and it'll at least be food for thought.
that's too small.
Is that too small? Thank you for telling me. So we'll go down, and then we need to, we'll go a little bit lower.
That was too small for me. I don't know for everybody else, but
Is this good enough for you?
yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, good. Say, let's read.
Design science event flow.
Now,
Subject-
just let me bring out that the last two words on his definition of teleology was design science. So now he's telling us what design science is. Okay, go.
It's subjective search research, teleology, intuition, conception, apprehension, experiment, and feedback.
Wow.
That's subjective.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm sure
Okay.
that there was another end parentheses right there. But he's saying it isn't just enough to do it once, do it again. Research it and then research it. Right.
Yeah. That's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah. Well,
I
we're
mean,
going to come back to it next week.
Yeah, I mean, you could spend the entire time on intuition alone. Generalization, objective development, prototyping number 1, prototyping number 2, prototyping number 3, production design, production modification, tooling, production, distribution, installation, maintenance, service, reinstallation, replacement, removal, scrapping, recirculation. Also, I missed reduction practice and regeneration, which is probably the most important word on that chart.
And those are all on the left side here.
Yeah, I couldn't see it at the time.
That's okay. I don't blame you. So on the left side is objective development, reduction practice, and regeneration. That's what generalization is. And the way we get there, or what we apply, are these individual things that you mentioned. I don't think we have any idea what prototyping 1, 2, or 3 is at this point. We'll probably read more down below. But I think it's inviting us to say, look, if you're going to design something, think of all of these things, including installation and maintenance and reinstallation and replacement.
It's
Yeah.
funny. Well, anyway,
What's
What,
funny?
Joe?
no, what I have to think about this a little bit more. I have to think about how these terms fit into something, to a framework that I had drawn out for myself at one point, where I look at things primarily as what can change, what you can do better, and what can't change, as those 3 things. As it's part of there's principles that are involved, there are, capabilities that are involved. It's part of a whole framework, right? But I'm thinking about how all these things fit underneath within that framework. So the
Yeah.
idea of reinstallation, replacement, like you're still asking yourself, what can you change?
Yeah.
What, and then what can't change out of this, there are some things that are fixed in this
Right.
world. And then what can you do better? Right. So there's things that you want removal, you want it scrapping, but there's other things that you want recirculation and you want maintenance. But those 3 categories fit within that. And I'm trying to think that there's objective development, which is I looked at it as objective as something that comes out of your values. So there's your values, your principles, then there's your goals and objectives, to tell you the truth. And then from there, I don't know where I would fit reduction practice. That would be
Well, this is interesting because to me, this is Kelly's business as replacement.
right.
He's made his whole business on replacing hoses, right? And he could just say, I'm going to replace the hose. But while he's involved in replacing the hose, he can be looking at maintenance, reinstallation issues, removal, scrapping, and recirculation. And when he does all those things, if he does them in the context of objective development, which includes reduction practice,
Right.
regeneration. So am I going to build a, go ahead?
So are those the principles
Maybe, yeah.
underneath that sit within this framework?
Yeah. In other words, Kelly can make the best hoses on the planet by building his hoses that are ultimately regenerative to whatever possibility, that reduce some of this mess, reduce scrapping, reduce recirculation, reduce removal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would have just drawn this a little bit differently. That's all. But I see exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, can I tell a story here?
Well,
Please.
I'll tell you what, we need to go. So maybe this is a
Okay.
good time to go ahead and finish
Go
your
ahead, tell a
and then we'll
story.
say goodbye.
Oh, I would like to hear it.
Okay, do you see what I put in the
Yeah,
chat box?
Susan's gonna read that for us.
Color things. Susan.
No, I was just joking, Susan, because I couldn't read.
Yeah,
close.
but maybe Susan can know colocin plant or a goosey plant.
I don't
You
know
call it-
that.
Steve,
Yeah,
I'm
no.
not sharing. Can you just look at a goosey plant or colocin and just put a definition on the
Is a goosey a place?
no, it's
No.
a name. It's a name. It's a name in Africa.
Oh, okay. Cool.
You can just put a goosey, EGUSI.
Well, this is it.
It'll come up. Yep. You see that plant?
Looks like watermelon.
It's a watermelon, Manu.
Yeah, it looks like watermelon. Is the family, but the how do you call it? The little stuff in the middle. How do you call that, Susan?
The seeds, the rind, the seeds.
The seeds, yeah, the seeds in are some of the richest food in the world. It's called a super food. Exponential square.
There they are.
Yeah. Now, if you take it, if you crack it and take it there, you see the white there?
Mm-hmm.
I used to
The
plant. these.
difficulty to doing it has always been the design, the machine. Because women do it manually. Because that's the difficulty.
I used to do it, man.
You dry it and then you crack it with some stuff. And I have this friend of mine who has put together the first ever machine to crack it automatically and to kind of do it in a certain way that yields, very high. And initially, he did it, he built this prototype from experimenting all of this, working with some research, some labs and things like that. He experimented, he built the first prototype I saw him building, the second prototype he building, the third he built it. Then he has to set it up to build some kind of small factory. He went doing that, experimenting. And now it came to a point where the focus is now this is the byproduct of this. Like the skin of it, what do you do? The egusi seed is soft. What are the extracts? Now it's coming to the use now of cakes and things like that, and recycling that skin into making some kind of, with resin plastics. You get me? And this guy is taking him basically 40 years.
Wow.
He started this project, I remember, in 1982. In 1982 that he started. And he has a unit of production and things. He's still doing it. That is a patient. You get what I'm trying to say? And through that, he's empowered women to have farms where they produce this stuff, that instead of just selling their produce at open marketplaces, they have a buyer who pay a good price to supply a factory. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So that is the story of something that was. It was, and the motivation of it is very family linked, in that there are some conditions that ran into his family, and that plant was said to have a lot of virtues into healing that condition. And that was his why. So he wanted, the why was to build something to bring out this seed that has these properties that can be used for this purpose. To me, it was very teleological. He didn't just set up to build any machine.
Beautiful.
You get what I'm trying to say? This is a real example of somebody. It's a very, very good friend of mine. Somebody that I know who has gone through that process and is still doing it. Is a patient. I'm saying again, it's almost 40 years since he started. At one point, he was on the back burner because he worked for Schlumberger company. He was on the field. He didn't think about it for 10 years.
Cool. All right. This is the time to end our call. Joe, how you feeling and what's your takeaway this evening?
You know, I'm feeling very, very fortunate. I appreciate everybody's effort in being here. I know, Susan, I see you're dialing in from somewhere else, so that, you know, I know that that's an effort. Andre, I see you're dialing in from your car and you're joining us, so I very much appreciate the effort. And Steve, you're recovering and recovering nicely, and you're still here. And Manu, it's still 5 a.m. So, which, you know, sometimes I find that to be the hardest part. But you know, everybody made an effort to be here, and I really, really appreciate that a great deal. You know, I really liked going over the children's section actually quite a bit. You know, talking about boundaries and energy and how time and lag fit into that framework. I would have never thought about those things. And seeing Bucky's concepts play out in early childhood development is something that it was quite shocking to me, actually, to be quite honest. So that was something new for me. I'm enjoying the teleology section quite a bit. I think that there's a lot that that I'm going to get out of that particular section. I'm going to actually take a look at the framework that he put together, and actually do a little bit of drawing myself to see how, you know, all these concepts work with one another. I think that there's, you know, we had some very, very good conversations around what all those, you know, how those relate to the real world. I know I'm missing a couple things here. I appreciated the right brain, left brain, revisiting that discussion too, as far as leading and lagging indicators. That was something new as well for me. So I really enjoyed the call. I always do, and I enjoy seeing everyone. It's a privilege. Susan, my friend, how are you doing? What are you taking away from today?
I'm thoughtful. I really like the idea of being able to focus on those critical first 4 years and what a difference we could make if we put the priorities of our youth first. Um, when I'm looking at what Bucky's trying to do in the design science, we're looking to modify environmental patterns. And one of the other things that I've taken from other places in Bucky is that environment is stronger than will. And if we can modify the environment in such a way that it makes it the next logical thing or the easier thing for human beings to do something that's to the advantage of the biosphere, they will just do it. And so it's us being able to see into the possibilities and come up with what those modifications might be of the environmental patterning that's already present. So it's an ongoing challenge for sure. Andre, how do you feel and what are you taking away?
Firstly, I'm absolutely grateful for everyone here, and also for Anne who invited me to participate and invite me to this session. I think over the last couple of weeks is a reflection moment for me in looking at what I can do more in my life and my time, and it's funny and it's not, in a sense that the universe is always very amazing in matching, marrying, and putting puzzles together in a form of challenges, in a form of various perspectives that you don't think that you are cut up for, and things align in a way that you probably didn't anticipate it that it would. So it's pretty interesting that when Anne invited me and we are talking about some collaboration over the years, and right now is it may come to fruition, but the crazy part is that it is aligning to what Bucky has been talking about since even before I was born, right? and the thought process of what Joseph, Steve, Susan, Manu, Julian, and everyone brought to the table gave me this new found perspective that everything happens for a meaning, and a meaning to serve us, and it gives me a good clarity of what are the following steps to do, and how to connect the dots to add more value than what I'm doing right now for the betterment of myself, my family, and for the world. So as much as it's just a sort of like a book club type of 2 hour-ish, but it meant a lot more in the mind right now, because I'm connecting the dots over the next couple of days, and then doing a lot of reflection and reading it back over and over again. And I think that is just super profound for me, and I truly am grateful for it. Yeah. Manu, how are you feeling, and what are you getting of this session?
I really feel grateful. I'm happy. Every time I come into this space, I have the impression that I'm growing. I don't know what your feelings are. I'm growing all the time. I'm also, Steve, your energy, I don't know, somebody's coming from sickness. I don't know, that explosive energy that you are exhibiting there, it's really amazing. What I get, okay, no, let's just first give the impression. I'm really, really impressed by Bucky's attachment to applying principles. Look at this method here. For example, you have always the duality, and it's starting from the general to the local, always. Subjective, objective. You see that flow?
Yes.
Subjective first, teleology, intuition, conception, apprehension, experiment, feedback. That is all in the thought. Then you go about applying. You can only learn by doing. Confucius said, application without knowledge is dangerous. Knowledge without application is futile. That was his practical way of saying this. So I've seen here that he's gone one full cycle to recycling, recirculation. So you are thinking comprehensively, you are experimenting, having that comprehensivity in mind and being open to it. Say, for example, if somebody was here who does solar panels, yes, put solar panel on the roof. What will become of the solar panels after their useful life? And are we going to recirculate it? Maybe you are going to start now kind of stimulating somebody or doing it into thinking about the business of recycling panels and things like that. So that is all that you have to have in mind in order to exercise power, creative power with accountability of that. And that is, to me, the major lesson I take away, is that you always have to think and act in a way that is the most comprehensive possible. And it has consequences that are far-reaching and that can take you to places that you wouldn't imagine before. And secondly, that is the most potent way of really influencing your environment, of altering your environment in a way that is beneficial to the most inclusive possible. That's what I take away. And I also send my best wishes to Kelly, to Rafa, and to
Yes.
all others who are not present today. So, Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, thank you, Manu. I'm always impressed with your ability to create a topological discussion on any topic we have. So we get the big macro conversation on what's going on. And I like the fact that we can look at a thing macro and micro, and this idea of seeing a way to incrementally implement and develop something that could be regenerative along the way would be cool. I was all excited and was hoping that that Aiden would still be with us. Is he there?
He's waving.
Is Aiden still there?
He's in the back. Yeah, he's in the back.
Is he in the back?
He's in the back
Is
seat.
Aiden still there?
Where is he? Aiden?
Yeah.
You're muted, Andre. You're muted. Because if he's there, I would love to hear a quick sentence on what he picked up in Sunday school today. I mean, here's the future of humanity based on our
Don't get
conversation.
him in an accident in order to get that sentence. I mean,
All of a sudden, the picture went up. Aiden
Yeah,
came out of the back seat. There we go. Your
that a-
mic's mute. Unmute your mic, Andre. So, Aiden, do you want to share a sentence on what you learned today at Sunday school? What did you learn today? What's your takeaway? What was your takeaway today from Sunday school? What are you going to tell your dad when you get home?
Sort of what? What did you learn on?
What's his takeaway?
You learn about story.
Was there a favorite? Was there a favorite story?
Their favorite story.
Well, cool. Share it with your dad. So, because there's our future right there. Our future is sitting in the back of your car, Andre. All right. So thank you, Aiden, for participating. That's really cool. I'm gonna take away. I have a grandchild named Aiden, by the way, Andre. One of my grandchildren is named Aiden. So there you go. This idea of looking at what?
This is my wife.
Oh, hi.
Wonderful.
Nice to meet you.
Boy, it's so
Wow.
good to see your whole family.
Oh, nice. That's so nice.
Very good. So I love the idea of the conversation that teleology, which is always seems to be about purpose, which is kind of philosophic and or religious, and yet it's very profound, even at the simplest level. That Bucky's made this transition to design science. That okay, if I'm going to have a purpose, okay, how does my purpose fit comprehensively into general application for all human beings, all human beings? So that was really profound for me, this invitation to come out of philosophy and go into some practical step-by-step implementation. And I'm still going to go with this idea of discipline as a profound epiphany today. That design without discipline, a good idea without discipline is just a good idea. So I'm taking away discipline. And I'm going to see if I can clean up this mess I've been living in for the last week, because I haven't done much at all. Okay, that's my share for today. Everybody complete? All righty.
Drive safe.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks for sharing your family, Andre.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for sharing your family. Really
Thanks.
quickly,
What?
I gotta send you that. I'll send you to the company too, Manu.
Pardon?
That company is very interesting. It's like how they're doing more. It's ephemeralization, essentially, doing more and
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Did you see the? I have to send it to you, Manu. It's this company that's basically puts all their furniture into a wall so that you can maximize your space and the use of so like a 300 square foot apartment, you can essentially have a bedroom, a living room, and everything, and it just maximizes everything.
Wow. Send me that.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it's really interesting, because I was thinking about then how do you, well, you could divide up a building and actually you could have more units.
Yes.
Joe, what's the name of that video? I have it on my machine, but what's the name of that video?
It was an article in the Wall Street Journal. That's why I hope it wasn't behind a paywall.
I got to see it. I'm going to go
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal. And then what's the
It's-
article title?
The article title is for rent, 327 square foot apartment with 5 bedrooms, thanks to robot furniture. But these are
Oh,
two
wow.
companies that are just starting out with it, that are interesting. But they're making deals in Madrid and in other places where, where space is limited. But that to me is really something that's innovative. And if they could ever get the cost down to that could be really something.
Well,
Quite,
here's IKEA has some robot furniture.
yes, but this is a little different. They actually talk about IKEA in the article.
To rebuild your gums and teeth while you sleep.
Hang
and
on.
say good.
Okay, there we go. I think this is the one. Whoops, hang on. Holy mackerel. Where's my thing?
I'll send it.
Because I think if anybody's listening to this recording, they deserve to get some.
The Roman times. So that was not a problem for 2000 years.
It's a
but now we
20-minute
have a
video.
big trend, which is urbanization.
We have millions and millions of people moving.
Okay, so here's
What company is that?
what just happened. Does it want to give me an ad? Or is it just,
Maybe your computer is slow, right?
We've been working there on what we call architectural robotics. And the idea here is architecture and robotics. So how you bring mechanics, electronics, software to make spaces effortlessly transformable. And the word effortless is very important because I've seen thousands of examples of beautiful tiny apartments that are just too much work to transform. So how we can make transformation not be a ritual, how we can make transformation be magical. And that's where the power of robotics comes into play. So if I tell you about 200 square feet, you will tell me you're crazy. But if you think about a 200 square feet bedroom, it's a nice bedroom. 200 square feet living room is a nice living room. 200 square feet bathroom is like a 5-star hotel bathroom. So if you bring technology, if you bring robotics to make that space adapt to you, because all activities are not happening at the same time, then the space can be much more. That's what we kind of try to prove there. So this was this apartment in which you could have the dining room, the living room, the bedroom, all of that with robotics. It could be a gentle touch, it could be gestures, it could be voice. The idea is that your home could be like like an app store in which you could customize functionalities. You could have the voice command application or the gesture application or whatever, a health application, whatever that is. So you could have the same technologies, but then your home
be totally different. The same way we customize mobile phones, the same way we download apps. So we started building that out. That was a prototype, it worked, but it was still a one-off. So the focus since then has been, okay, how we can make this scale.
okay. So that's what,
Yeah,
That's what Joe was talking about.
I put the article in the chat. The
What is the link? You have it?
it's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Let me know if you can't access it, which was interesting to see. There's a professor that they talked to at Cornell that his name's Keith Evan Green, who actually kind of knows this industry well. So it would be interesting to read more papers about what he's saying about it. Because I don't know, the way I look at it is that housing is so expensive, and especially in certain areas in the country, if you can, and these companies are somewhat new, if they can bring down the price of actually making a 300 square foot, livable, desirable even, well then, that is an improvement. I know Elon Musk was working on something, right? Wasn't he working on?
He's doing tiny homes.
Yeah, he's doing tiny homes. I don't think that's going to catch on like this would, because this is using existing infrastructure. And so you could actually, it reminded me of the diagram that you had shown, Steve, where you're splitting up the building. I mean, you could split up a building, or you could increase the capacity for a family. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I think this robotic idea is pretty cool.
Well, if let's just say you have an 800 square foot apartment, you could just buy something and make it all of a sudden 2 apartments.
But remember that the more
Depends on zoning.
the more technological you get, the more responsibility that you have to get the user educated, the use of it.
Yes. Well, this is linked in with Google and Amazon as well. But anyway, it was interesting.
This is the one that Joe was talking about. In the event anybody is listening to the recording, if they wanted to see that, they're now seeing it, because otherwise they wouldn't see it. Here it is over here.
Yeah.
Is it going to get in focus? Are we going to get in focus?
Is it payable, Joe? Is it can we get the article just right there?
There might be a pay wall behind it.
I don't think so. I didn't have a paywall.
Yeah, I want to read the research that's behind it by that professor at Cornell his name that I put in the chat. That's
So what we're not seeing is that the bedroom's there, then you can shrink the bedroom and you have a walk-in closet. If you move the
Right.
closet out, you have a walk-in closet, and I'm sure the bathroom is somewhere there too. I thought the other video I showed was more revealing. When I
Right.
saw this one, I thought it was cool, but the other video
the other
showed
one. Yeah,
additional stuff.
The other one actually showed you how they really made a small apartment. This looks a little bit more intense, actually, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it'd be cool. You have a ceiling over the top of you. Think it's a roofing treatment. All of a sudden, it comes down into your bed. And then what I'm sure it's not showing you is there's a walk-in closet over here, and that connects to a bathroom that's normally functional. There's probably a little bathroom back here, and then it can expand into a wardrobe room. I don't know. Yeah, some good ideas. I'd never seen this before, Joe, so that was cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, it's they're signing contracts all over the world. I mean, so
Yeah.
in
And
dense
these are
places.
things that would make Elon's tiny homes even cooler, because they're very, very efficient. If you put a partition in there that was movable to expand to have a party room, and to make your bedroom into something small and closed in, or expand it out and make it a fun room. So there you go. Okay.
My problem with Elon is that he's taking those to Mars.
Yeah.
Teleology, that's my problem with it.
Yeah, there are some zoning issues over there too, right? I think that you have to deal with.
The trouble is, if he says, I'm going to take this to Mars, everybody laughs at him. But if he said, we're going to do this in LA, they kicked him out of LA. He tried to do the Boring Company, and he couldn't get it done. Right. So he moved to Texas, and there now he's launching his spaceships out of Texas, and building his cars in Texas, because he can do stuff like this. So anyway. All right, then. Extra bonus minutes for anybody who stayed on the recording. See you all.
That's cool.
Cool. Take care. Good night or good morning.
Good morning.